Hi, well, welcome to Learn and Master Guitar Session 7. In this session, we're going to cover lots of great important things. We're going to start talking about bar chords. Up until this point, we've talked about open chords, some of your basic chords, and the keys that guitar players personally like, C, G, D, A, and E. But now we're going to start talking about getting into other keys. And I'm going to teach you the secret to playing in any key that you'll ever ask to be playing, is bar chords. We're going to talk about ways to strengthen our fingers so that our fingers are able to play the chords like we need to. A lot of folks complain about they can't get their fingers strong enough, so we're going to talk about that a little bit. We're also going to learn all of the notes on the entire neck of the guitar on the 6th string, okay, which is the string that we use to pivot these bar chords off of. We're also going to start a new section, this DVD, called How Music Works. A little bit about music theory, a little bit about some of the understanding of why music works the way it does. First thing we're going to talk about is half steps and whole steps in music, and we're going to learn about building a major scale. So we've got an awful lot to cover. I hope you're ready to go. Let's get started. Okay, let's talk about bar chords. Bar chords opens up a whole new world for us as we play guitar. It shifts us from just playing in a couple of keys to now we can play in any key. And that's what bar chords allow us to do. Bar chords, let me explain that first of all. It's not B-A-R, it's B-A-R-R-E. Sometimes the spelling, you might think we've misspelled things throughout the whole book. No, not at all. Bar is B-A-R-R-E. When we get into bar chords, there's a couple things. Before we have to get there, I've got to show you a couple of skills that you can get your hands strengthened up on, so where you're able to do the bars when we get to them here in a minute. First thing we need to talk about is our hand position. Let's review some of the good things that we need to do with our hand position. And this is going to become real critical here as we get into these bigger chords. Now, before, when we're doing our C's and our G's and our A minors, remember I told you we need to have our wrist down. There needs to be airspace between our bottom of our wrist, or our palm, the face of our palm, and the bottom of the guitar. You don't want your thumb hanging over the top, especially when we get to bar chords. It just doesn't work when you have it like that. So we're going to have to lower that wrist, bring that first finger out, and he's going to be straight. This is one of the keys to playing bar chords well, is getting that first finger straight. Okay? Now, bar chords, let's talk about the difference between bar chords and movable chords. They're really the same thing, but bar chords tells you a little bit more about it. Bar chords mean that when you bar, that's telling you that you're using one finger to cover more than one string. Okay, not all movable chords use bars, but for our purposes right now they will. So you're using one finger to cover more than one string. Now, this requires a lot of work for our first finger, so we're going to have to strengthen him up, and we're going to cover that in just a second. But before that, I need to show you a little bit about how we move these chords along the neck. We need to learn all the notes on this 6th string first, so that when it's time to move those chords, we know where we're moving them to. Okay, so let's talk about the 6th string here for a second. I need to teach you a musical concept. It's called half steps and whole steps. Half steps and whole steps. In this big world of ours, half steps are the distance from one note to the next note, wherever it is. Okay? Just whatever the next fret's worth on a guitar, one fret is a half step. Okay? On a piano, if you wanted to put it with piano, if you were on a piano, hitting a note and then the next key, whether it's white or black, would be a half step. Just that distance from one note to the next note is a half step. If I put two of those together, I get a whole step. So like if I'm down here, the distance between a C and a D would be a whole step. I'm covering a half step and then another half step. So the distance from a C to a D would be a whole step. An F to a G, that would be a whole step. Even when we use an open string, there's still this one fret in between this G and the A. Those would also be whole steps. Now, half steps are between two pairs of notes. This is very critical. Here's the rule. The only naturally occurring half steps are between E and F and B and C. Naturally occurring, what I mean by that is there's no sharps or flats involved. If we're not talking about sharps or flats at all, we're just talking about just the notes, C, D, E, F, G, and A and B. The only naturally occurring half steps are between two pairs of notes, E and F and B and C. On our guitar, it'd be E to F and B to C. Now, you may think that's not very important, but here in a second, that's going to get real critical. Let's learn the notes on the 6th string. We already have open E. We have first finger F. We've got up here on the 3rd fret G. Well, if I wanted to keep going higher, the distance between a G to an A would be a whole step. Think of it this way. Everything is going to be a whole step except for two pairs of notes, E and F and B and C. All the other ones, without sharps or flats, are going to be whole steps. So a G to an A would be a whole step. An A to a B would be another whole step. Now here, I want to go to a C, but the rule says between a B and a C is a half step. So that would just be 1 fret's worth. That would be C. Now we need to go from C to the next note, which would be a D. Well, that's not one of our exceptions, so that would be a whole step again. And then D to E would be another whole step again. Let's do that again. You try it with me at home. We have E, F, G, then the next note would be A, and that would be a whole step up at the 5th fret. Next note would be a B, that would be a whole step up at the 7th fret. And then between B and C, that's just a half step, so that's at the 8th fret. Then D, a whole step above that at 10, and D to E would be our last one up here, and that would be the 12th fret. Now, let me tell you about the magical 12th fret. At the 12th fret, everything starts repeating. This would be E, then you'd have F, just like this F. Then you'd have G, just like this G. So it just kind of keeps going. E, F, G, A, B. So really, once you've got the first 12, you have the rest of the instrument there because it just keeps repeating. Okay? Let's do it one more time. E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E. Now let's go back down backwards. Okay? Try and say and play the notes with me. E, D, C, B, A, G, F, E. Very good. Now, when I throw sharps or flats in it, I just have to raise, remember, for whatever note it is, if I'm sharping it, I go up 1 half step, which would be 1 fret's worth. So if I wanted a G sharp, there would be a G sharp on the 4th fret. If I wanted, let's say, a C sharp, that would be, well, here's C, I go a half step above that, and I get C sharp. So now let's jump around a little bit. I'm just going to tell you a couple of them, and you try and find them. Okay? We'll start out with G. There would be a G. What about C? Where would that be at? Count it up. E, F, G, A, B, C. At the 8th fret. What about F? Well, that one's pretty easy. That's down here at the 1st. That was one of the first things we learned. What about a B flat now? Well, here's a B, so there's a B flat. What about an E flat? Well, go up to the 12th fret, that's E. I can't get any lower down here to the open E, so I've got to go high. If I can't go low, I've got to go high. There's E flat. So there's some chance for you to practice in there. Now, we need to get our first finger strong enough to do some of the bar chords that are coming up here in a minute. So let's talk about strengthening up our first finger. Okay? Many people say that bar chords, they just don't do bar chords because bar chords are hard. Well, bar chords aren't hard. You are just weak, especially your first finger. Well, at least your first finger is weak. So we need to strengthen up that first finger a little bit before we get into bar chords. So let's go up to here to the 5th fret. Okay? And let's put our first finger down, and we're going to cover 3 strings at a time. Just the bottom 3 strings, okay, with our first finger. Play those I put it down. I've got to put a lot more pressure on this. We play all three of them together. Ready? Let's play. Now, it may buzz a little bit as your finger's getting used to strengthening up to play these bar chords, but that's okay. That's what we're trying to strengthen right now. It takes a while to do this. You may not be getting this the first time you do it. It takes a while to get your fingers strengthened up enough to do what we need to do. So let's just go through a little exercise to help you. Make sure you have good hand position. Make sure that wrist is forward, not back like this, but forward, and your finger is straight. Finger is straight on the frets. Okay? Make sure that first finger is dead straight, not angling in a little bit like this. Or I know you need pressure, and you want to bring that wrist up for pressure. Leave that wrist down for that. Okay? Try not to buzz. Let's go over the fifth fret, cover 3 strings. Okay? Now let's take the whole picture down and let's go down to the 3rd fret. See if we can get those 3. Good. Let's jump down to maybe the 2nd fret. The closer I get to this nut down here, it gets a little bit harder. The easiest place to practice these bar chords is in the middle of the neck, right here at the 5th or the 7th fret. What about at the 1st fret? Can you get all those 3 to sound? Okay. Now let's do 4 strings. Okay. Let's go back up here to the 5th fret, and now we're going to do 4 strings. Okay? Try and get those to sound. Let's go up maybe to the 7th fret. Let's go up a little bit more. What about the 9th fret here? Good. All right, now let's kick it up a notch. Let's go to 5 strings. Okay? Now, you don't want your finger necessarily straight on the instrument like this. You want it kind of angled a little bit. I mean, if you can kind of see where my finger, the notches in my finger for where the strings are really on this last quarter of my finger. So I'm not necessarily dead on. I'm kind of offset a little bit. Let's go over here to the 3rd fret and do the same thing. Remember, a good finger position, if I'm hugging up right behind the fret, that's the easiest place for me to get the notes to sound. It requires the least amount of pressure. Okay, if I'm back here, it's going to sound real buzzy. Okay, let's go down to the 1st fret. It's pretty tough down there. Okay, now let's go to all 6. Okay, now it'll take a little practice to figure out where you actually need to push that first finger down at. It might help to actually overshoot. You don't want to be just right here. It helps to kind of overshoot it a little bit. I kind of overshoot it, I don't know, maybe a ½ an inch or so. See if you can get all 6 strings, each string to sound out. Give a good clear sound. Let's go down to the 3rd fret, and eventually down to the 1st fret. And if you can conquer putting all the pressure that you need to get that 1st fret, all 6 strings without buzzing, you got enough strength to do any bar chord that I'm going to be able to throw at you. Okay? So you may not be able to do this initially, so take a little bit of time each day, strengthen up that first finger. Don't give up after the first time you do it. It takes a little bit of time, over a couple of weeks maybe, to get that first finger strengthened up enough. Okay? You ready to learn some bar chords? Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's talk about 5 major chord forms that we're going to learn on that 6th string. Okay? Now, you'll notice as we put up the first one, the F chord, okay, there's a couple of new concepts that you're going to see on that chord block that you haven't seen before yet. First one of them is a fret number. Okay? Everything up to this point we've done down here in the first position. But now you're going to start seeing a fret number beside some of your chord forms, which would be like a 1 and then an FR period. Sometimes it may say 5 FR period, which would be like the 5th fret, or the 7th fret, 7 FR period. That's just telling you the fret number that you're at. Okay? The other thing is you're going to see that big arc over the top of it. That is the symbol for a bar. That means everything that is covered there is being covered by that one finger. Sometimes that bar will be just 2 strings, sometimes it'll be 4. In all of these that we're doing today, it's going to be all 6 strings. The last one, you'll notice there's a diamond. We don't have just black circles and open circles. Now we've got a diamond in there. That diamond is critical. That's going to be the note that we're pivoting off of as we're moving these chords around. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. but that's the note that we're pivoting off of. Okay? First form we're going to learn is an F chord. Okay? So let's see what we've got here. On that chord block, you'll notice there's a bar over those 6 strings. Okay? So you get that happening first. Then you put your third finger on that 5th string F, pinky underneath that, and then that A is covered by the 2nd finger on the 3rd string. That's an F chord. Let's try it one more time. Make sure each note is sounding out nice and clearly. Again, it takes a while to get this, so if you don't get it the first time, don't give up. It takes a while to strengthen your muscles. The only difference between this and this is hand strength. I didn't move the position of my fingers at all. So if your chord sounds more like this, all it takes is a little bit more hand strength to get it, and you'll be doing it. Okay? There's an F. Now, the next form we're going to learn is an F minor, FM, you'll see. Then I just take my 2nd finger off, and I've got an F minor. Next one is an F7. I put my 2nd finger back on, I take my pinky off, and that's an F7. The 4th one down there, or the 4th one we're going to cover, is an F minor 7th. I take my 2nd finger off and my pinky off. And then the last one is an F suspended, which I put my pinky back on, except this time I put him down on the 3rd string. Okay, so those are the 5 chord forms that we're going to talk about. Okay, now let's talk about moving those chord forms. If you look at the first example in your book, you've got an F chord, so let's form an F chord. And then it goes up to a G chord. Well, here's where the pivoting comes in place. Remember how I taught you half steps and whole steps and learning what notes they are on the 6th string? If I take this F chord, where's the F in this F chord? As far as the 6th string is concerned, it's right here on my 1st finger. If I move my 1st finger to where a G is, and now form the exact same chord, I've got a G chord. See how that works? The next measure has an A chord. Well, again, I put my 1st finger where the A is, and then form the chord down. I've got A. The next one is a B flat. I go up here to B flat, and I do the whole chord. So if I was doing all that together, it would be like this. Ready, play. F, 2, 3, 4, then move up to G, 2, 3, 4, then A, 2, 3, 4, and B flat, 2, 3, 4. Very good. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Just between a couple of these forms. It starts out on a G. We find our G, we make our chord, okay, then it goes to A minor. So we have to go up here to A, form a minor chord, then it goes to B minor, and C. Okay? Very good. And that gives you some idea of bar chords and how you move them. Now, it's going to take you a while to get these, so I know I ran through them pretty quick. That's why the workshop time is going to start paying off here. Now, let's learn a little bit about music in our How Music Works section. Okay, welcome to our How Music Works section. Learning a little bit about music and a little bit how music fits together is one of the most important skills that you can learn as a guitar player. Some may be thinking, gosh, just teach me a couple of chords and I'm ready to go. Well, that's maybe the learn part of the learn and master guitar, but the part of when you get into the master part of it, you need to learn a little bit about music and about how music affects your playing as a guitar player. So we're going to take a second to learn a little bit about that. The road to all learning how chords are spelled, what notes, and how we can move those chords around, it all starts with major scales, and major scales are built up of half steps and whole steps. We talked about half steps a little bit previously. Okay, half step is distance between one note and his immediate neighbor. Okay, I get 2 half steps, I put them together, I get a whole step. Right? Remember the rule? The only naturally occurring half steps are between E and F and B and C. The only naturally occurring half steps are between E and F and B and C. Okay? But when we start to add things in here, you need to keep track of those sharps and flats, as you'll see. Okay? So if the distance between an F and a G is a whole step, then the distance from an F sharp to a G sharp is also a whole step. If an F to a G is a whole step, an F sharp to a G sharp is a whole step. Okay, see how that works? Let's do a couple of examples real quick. What's the distance from a C sharp to a D? Now, if you want to play this on your guitar, that's fine too. If you want to think about it in music, which is what we're going to put on the screen, I want you to think about it in music notation too, because this is true no matter whether you're playing a guitar, a piano, a trumpet, or a tuba. Okay, the distance between a C sharp and a D is a half step. If a C to a D is a whole step, I've moved that C closer to the D. Now C sharp to a D is just a half step. Okay? What is the distance from an E flat to an F? Think about that for a second. An E flat to an F. If an E to an F is a half a step, then if I scoot that E farther from that F, a half a step, then it becomes an E flat, and that then becomes a whole step. So an E flat to an F is a whole step. What about the distance from a G to an A flat? Well, G to an A is a whole step. If I scoot that A closer down to that G, it becomes just a half step. So a G to an A flat is a half step. Now let's talk about major scales. Everything that we're talking about from this point on, all the theory, all the harmony stuff, what notes you can add to chords to sound hip and colorful in your sound, it is all based off of one thing I found: major scales. Okay? Major scales are the building blocks for all of music, and they are built from a specific pattern of half steps and whole steps. It's like math. It's like a formula. I know many of you, math may not have been your best subject, but music has a lot to do with math. In fact, many studies have found that if you have a student that's struggling in math, if you teach them music, something about the order and the presentation of the music helps them in their math skills. So something about that in our brains connects the two together in the same way we process the information. Okay? Major scales are built from a pattern. It's a pattern of half steps and whole steps. You ready for the pattern? Here it is. The pattern for a major scale is whole step, half step. Whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Okay, so it's 2 whole steps and a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step. That's how a major scale is made. You start on any note, whether it's an F or a G or a B flat or a G flat. You start on that note and you build up, just like in building blocks, half step, or you build it in the half step, whole step pattern, 2 holes and a half, 3 holes and a half, and you end up with the major scale. Let's try this a little bit. Let's start in C. Okay, so if I have a C major scale, I start on a C, then the pattern says I need to go up a whole step. The distance from a C to a D is a whole step, so I would just go right up to D. Then I need another whole step. A D to an E is a whole step. Then I need a half step, the pattern says. E to an F, conveniently, is a half step. Next one, I need a whole step. Whole step up from an F would be a G. Whole step up from a G would be an A. Whole step up from an A would be a B. And then I have a half step at the end, which gets me back to C. Your first and your last note should always match. Okay? If you get to the end of some of these exercises and your first and last note don't match, somewhere you screwed up along the way. The first and last note should always match. 2 holes and a half, 3 holes and a half. Okay? Now, as you go through different notes, you need to edit the sharps and flats. You need to adjust those sharps and flats in order to make the pattern work out right. Okay? So we can get the pattern of half steps and whole steps to make a major scale. Now, when you're spelling scales, all of the notes need to be consecutive. What do I mean by that? You can't jump from a C sharp to an E. I gotta have a note in between. It has to go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I can't jump from a C, no matter whether it's a C sharp, to an E flat, It doesn't, in music theory, that doesn't work. You can't do that. I have to go from some kind of a C, no matter how bad I have to sharp or flat it, to some kind of a D, no matter how much I have to sharp and flat it in order for it to work. Okay? Let's try a couple of one. Let's try a scale that is going to include some sharps or flats in it. Let's try an F scale. Okay? We're going to do an F major scale. You just think with me. We start on an F, then we need a whole step. Whole step up from an F is a G. Then we need another whole step. Whole step up from a G is an A. Now I need a half step. Here's the trick. An A to a B is a whole step, so I've got to squeeze that B down a half step to get it to work out in our pattern right. Whole, whole, half. So it would be F, G, A, and now B flat. Okay, now I need to go a whole step up, but I'm going a whole step up from a B flat. So that would be C. If a B to a C is just a half step, a B flat to a C now would be a whole step. And a whole step up from a C is a D, whole step up from a D is an E. Now I'm back to half step, E to an F. My first and last notes match. I've got an F major scale. F, G, A, B flat, C, D, E, F. Okay? There are many more exercises in your book to get you a lot of good practice on major scales. It's not just about spelling them once, it's about learning them. It's kind of like your multiplication tables. You're eventually going to have to learn all these scales. Now you may think, there's no way I could learn all these scales. It's not like there's 100 of them. There's only 12 different notes on your guitar before they start repeating. So there's only 12 different major scales. It's not an unknowable amount of information. It's actually a pretty relatively easy amount of information, but it is going to take more than just doing it once. So you need to do them over and over and over again. That's why we give you plenty of exercises to do that. Okay? So memorize which scales have which sharps and flats. That'll be a good place for you to start. Learning how to build scales is one of the most important things you can do for your musicianship. It may be a little technical right now, but it's going to start paying off when we start going beyond what the average guitar player can do. Most every guitar player that you run across can do C and G. Well, we're moving beyond C and G now. We're moving down to playing A flats and G flats and knowing what chords go with what. Okay? So if you're finding we're going a little bit past you, go back and review some of the earlier exercises, and we can get yourself up on those skills now that we're building scales, we're ready to go. Let's talk about our assignment for this week, or for this session. Let's take a look at our assignment. Your assignment for this session is to practice saying and playing the notes on the sixth string, ascending and descending. Remember how we did that? E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, and then I want you to say them and play them down. E, D, C, B. Play them all the way down. Memorize the 5 sixth-string bar forms that we talked about. F, F minor 7, F7, and F suspended. Okay? Do those fingering and strengthening exercises if you're having problems getting the bars down to be strong enough. Okay? Try not to get any buzzes or missed notes. Okay? Play through the 6-string bar chord exercises in your book. Play through the song that we have in our book. And for our How Music Works section, fill out the major scale worksheets in the book using the major scale pattern that we talked about. That's a lot of material for this time, but I know you're going to get it. Keep working at it. I'll see you at the workshop time. Hi, welcome to Session 7, the workshop time. You ready to work out all the things we learned? Here we go. First thing we need to talk about is we're going to jump around on that 6th string. You jump with me. Play a G on that 6th string. Okay? What about a C? Where would that be? Let's count it up. E, F, G, A, B, C. In fact, let's do that. Let's go. We're going to count them all the way up and all the way down. Okay? Here he starts on the E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, magical 12th fret. Okay, a lot of guitars have a double dot right there. Going back down, D, C, B, A, G, Let's jump around. Find a G. Find a C. What about an F? B flat. E flat. Remember, you can't go low, so you got to go high. 12th fret E, E flat. A flat. C sharp. F sharp. B. E. Open E, of course, here at the 12th fret. A. D. And then we're back to C. Very good. All right, now remember our 5 forms that we've learned. We've learned an F. Take that second finger off, F minor. F7. F minor 7. F suspended. Okay? Remember to have good form, lower that wrist, lots of airspace in between that. Keep that first finger straight. If you need to strengthen up that first finger, take a few seconds or a few minutes to do our finger strengthening exercise to do that. We're going to go ahead and move on, but if you need to strengthen that first finger, do that and come back to us. Okay? Let's start the basic bar chord exercises. Number 1. Ready? Play. 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Repeat it, back down to F. Number 2, G. Ready? Let's do this one slow, and then we'll play it sped up. One time slow, one time fast. G. Number 2, go. 1, 2, another one. A minor. B minor. C. Okay, now let's play a little bit faster. Ready, go. G, A minor. Try not to hesitate between chords. B minor. Let's skip down and do number 4. Number 4 starts on a B flat major. You ready? Got it? First time slow. Ready? Play. C minor. F7, big jump down to F7. G minor. C minor. F suspended. F7, B flat. Good. Now, let's try number 6 to close this section off. Okay? Number 6 starts on a G. Ready? Go. 2. B minor. Big jump up to B minor. C. Back to B minor. Try not to hesitate between chords. A minor. Big jump down to F. F sharp. Very good. Okay, now let's look at the song that we have in our book. Home on the Range. Okay, it's in 3/4 time. let's do the single notes first, and then we'll work on the chords. And I want you to play those chords, even though a lot of them are open chords, I want you to try and play as many of them as you can as a bar chord. The idea to strengthen up that hand. Okay, let's do the single notes first. Okay, ready, go. Eighth notes. We tie over. 3, 1, 2. 1, 2. Dotted quarter. 2, 3, 1. Next part, that G. 2, 3. 2, 3, 1, 2. Two, three, 1, 2. Two, three, 1, 2, 3. Good. Now let's go through the bar chords on it. Okay? I want you to start on that C. Okay? The C, where would that C major be? Well, F, G, A, B, C. The first chord's a C major. Then it would be a C major again in the next measure, even though it's not written. Then it goes to an F major. You've got to jump all the way down to F. Another F. Back to C. Another C. Here comes a G7. Jump down to G. Get the 7th form. 2, 3. Back up to C. 2, 3. F. Go. 2, 3. Back to C. You get a lot of good practice jumping. 2, 3. 2, 3. Here we go, the next part. G. G7th now, take that pinky off. C. A minor. D7th, way up here at the top. And G. 2, 3, G7th. C. Back to F. F minor. There you go. C. G7. Back to C. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Very good. Good workout on our hand. Your hand's probably pretty sore about now. I think I might do my little finger exercise here to strengthen up, to loosen up that hand a little bit after doing all that. Okay? Bar chords take consistent practice. We haven't had it's been a few sessions since we've actually had to deal with something physical, a physical issue. And getting your hand strengthened up enough to do bar chords is a physical thing, and it takes time. For the average student, to get these bar chords down like you need to, it takes about 3 weeks. So don't feel discouraged if I'm running them through them real quick and you don't get them in the first 10 minutes. It takes about 3 weeks of giving them about 5 or 10 minutes each day to toughen up that finger and get him strong enough to do what he needs to do. You can't just do it for a couple hours and be there. It generally takes a little bit longer than that, so don't be discouraged when you do that. Okay? Now let's talk about major scales. Remember our major scale? It is a pattern of half steps and whole steps. What's the pattern? 2 wholes and a half, whole, whole, half, and then 3 wholes and a half, whole, whole step, half. Put that all together, whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Let's play it, or let's spell it in G, if we were in G. G, now I need a whole step, that's A. Now I need another whole step, B, Now I need a half step, C. I need a whole step now, D. I need another whole step, E. And now I need a third whole step, which that's going to make that an F sharp. E to F sharp. And then I need a half step at the end, F sharp to G. So a G scale is G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G. We're going to learn about keys and key signatures next time, but that F sharp is telling you some very important information. In the key of G, we have an F sharp. Let's do one more. Let's spell a B flat scale. Starts on a B flat, then I need a whole step above a B flat, should be C. I need another whole step, D. Now I need a half step up from a D. That would be an E flat. So far I've got B flat, C, D, E flat. Now I need a whole step to an F, another whole step to a G, another whole step, third whole step, that would be to an A, and then our half step at the end gets us back to B flat where we started. So a B flat scale is B flat, C, D, E flat, F, G, A, B flat. I would encourage you to spell the scales that we have in the worksheets there if you haven't done so already. Once you've done them, it's not like you've solved the problem. Once you do them, go back and do them again. So I would write down on a piece of paper, C, F, all the different keys, should have 12 of them by the time you're done, and then write out those major scales again, and write them out again, and write them out again, until you can memorize that a B flat scale has a B flat and an E flat in it, and a G scale has an F sharp in it. Now it may seem like a lot of information, and it is a lot of information, but it's like your multiplication tables. You just kind of have to memorize them, because where we're going, it's going to take, you're going to need that information quickly and readily. So I'd encourage you to, if you need to, stop everything now. Don't go on until you memorize those scales and what sharps and flats go with those. We'll talk more about the keys next time. It's very hard work at it, but you can do it. Learning music is a big task, and not very many people delve into actually understanding what they're playing. That's what separates the average player from going beyond average. So I'm glad you've chosen to do that. So we'll see you next time.